Hello everyone, it's Tomebinder. In this video, I'm going to do a little podcast for the first time in a while, talking about 10 easy ways to improve your Ancient Warfare 3 map. I often give these bits of advice in a scattered fashion. I'll maybe say one or two things every time I play a map, but I figured I would compile them all in one video so you can refer back to it when you want to know my life hacks for Ancient Warfare 3. So, jumping right into it, the first thing on my list here is add a few scripts to add some behavior to your enemies in Ancient Warfare 3, okay? There are very easy scripts you can make, and I have tutorials about them on my channel that allow enemies to crouch down when they're shot, lie down when they're shot, and target the player when they're shot. Just adding a few scripts that make the enemies feel a bit more reactive really helps. So you could easily script an enemy unit to target a unit that shoots it, you know what I mean? When an enemy is damaged, have it target the unit that damages it. And again, there are tutorials for these behaviors on my YouTube channel. So I won't go into too much detail about this. All you have to do is check out my tutorials playlist. Moving on now, these are in no particular order, I might add. No night maps, just plain and simple. There is the option in Ancient Warfare 3 to set the time of day of your map. Honestly, the night in Ancient Warfare 3 does not look good. Everything is gray and black, and shades between those two colors. There is nothing visually interesting. Even if you were to look at a horror game made by a game studio, a horror game, even let's say on Roblox, you're able to see color and light, even if it's ostensibly taking place at nighttime. So my recommendation instead is to set the time to maybe late evening or even midday and use like black fog objects. If you really must have something take place during the nighttime in your Ancient Warfare 3 map, you have to make sure there's a lot of visible color. So add little light sources, lamps, flickering lights, flashlights, fire, and then apply custom light objects to it so the player sees a broader diversity of colors than just gray. Because that is the pitfall you can fall into when you have a night map. It's not visually interesting at all, and the players can't distinguish what any of your objects are, because objects in Ancient Warfare 3 have color, and you gray them all out by having them take place at night. So if you want something to be dark, just in general, you have to make it still colorful and visible. I know that sounds contradictory, but if you watch movies, you'll see that they're supposed to take place at nighttime, but you can still see a lot of color and different light in those nighttime scenes. The same thing applies for Ancient Warfare 3. This is very important. Moving on now, custom models are very important to your Ancient Warfare 3 map. That was a game-changing update. I remember when it came out. I think I made a podcast just about that. Custom models really help in the department of making your map feel like it's its own game, and it's not just a level in Ancient Warfare 3. You have so much creativity in Blender, if you're a modeler, to make your own models and create a visual language for your map that really makes it feel like it's its own game, kind of like you were, for example, a Roblox minigame maker. However, if you're not a modeler, and I'm not, there are still thousands of custom models available for you on the workshop. Custom guns, custom objects, decorations, things like that. And honestly, in 2026, you need to be using custom models, not the vanilla objects in Ancient Warfare 3. You have to be using both. A lot of the vanilla objects in Ancient Warfare 3 are great, they're iconic, they look good for the art style of the game, but you do need to be using custom models as well to move beyond the restrictions placed on the game by the developer. You have a lot more freedom at your fingertips, so this is where you should be using the Steam Workshop to broaden your horizons a little bit. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about how you brand and promote your Ancient Warfare 3 map. You might be thinking, I've made this great map, but not enough people are subscribing to it. So I'm going to give you two suggestions in quick succession about that. The first one is to make sure you just reread your map description and title, and make sure it has capital letters. So I notice a lot of people, Ancient Warfare 3 does have a younger demographic. Maybe people still aren't, at their maximum level of writing that they will attain in their life. That's fine. I would recommend, however, rereading your description and making sure everything is grammatically correct. If you need to run it through Grammarly or something like that, feel free. However, I don't recommend running it through an AI chatbot and having it fix it, because that can change the grammar around, and it's pretty obvious when something has AI-generated grammar. So run it through Grammarly, something that will simply correct your technical mistakes, capitalization, misspelling, etc. And the map looks a lot more professional, because think about it like this. When you're looking at a map on the workshop, you don't have much to work with, just the title, thumbnail, and description usually. And if you see spelling mistakes, lowercase letters, it feels like the person didn't put any effort into the description, If they didn't put any effort into the description, how can they be expected? Like, I wouldn't think they'd put any effort into the map, so I'm not going to subscribe. So reread your descriptions and correct any sort of grammar mistakes. That's important. Similarly, when you're promoting your map, you only have a few opportunities to hook a player, and one of them is the custom thumbnail. Creating a custom thumbnail for your map is very easy. You can use a lot of softwares. I personally use paint.net, which I'll link in the description, and you just have to look up the dimensions of a YouTube thumbnail or a Steam thumbnail. It might be different, not sure. But regardless, it's very easy to create a custom thumbnail for your map that has the title of the map on it at the very least, and maybe you play around with the color and light effects in your image editing software. But a custom thumbnail just screams effort, okay? And that's what you need to convey if you want somebody to actually click on and play your map. So I recommend a custom thumbnail. Now we're going back into map design components here, and I recommend breaking your own map. What does that actually mean in practice? It means, first of all, playing your own map a lot, and playing it in different ways. Map creators tend to fall into the pattern of, when they're playtesting their map, they play it the same way every time. But there's going to be such a diversity of play styles and priorities when randoms download and check out your map. So you have to play the role of the random and try to break your own map by playing it in as many different ways as possible. Play as a murder hobo, play as a cautious camper, do whatever you need to do to find the glitches on the edges of your map. Maybe there's something that's destructible that shouldn't be, for example. Also, maybe you've made an annoying character in your map that players might shoot. So you have to shoot that character and see how it affects the map. If it breaks the map, you have to make the character unkillable. That kind of thing. There's a term for it in programming. I don't know exactly what it's called, like breaking and entering. No, something like that. But regardless, you're supposed to try to break your own project before you put it out there, because certainly the players will be trying as well. Kind of playing off of that, I recommend as a map maker you have 2 trusted playtesters who you can send your map to. Close friends, people who aren't going to leak anything, people who are going to be honest with you about the quality, people who are going to do that try and break it type thing too. So you need people who are willing to kind of explore the limitations of the map, find its weak points, give you feedback, a good feedback and honest feedback, and help you make it as good as you can be. If you have only one playtester, then it's just you and one person, and you might not have enough perspectives on the map before you put it out. So I recommend having 2. Any more than 2, you start to get too many cooks in the kitchen. I recommend picking 2 trustworthy people who you can consult with. And now we're going more into game design principles. Definitely something that I've always been frustrated with in Ancient Warfare 3 is when I'm killed by an enemy that I have no chance of fighting. You know what I mean? No chance of seeing, no chance of resisting. So think about it like this. You walk around a corner and you're instantly killed. You don't even have the chance to see where the bullet came from. That is very, very unsatisfying. No real video games have encounters like that. So you have to really be careful to remove the sharp corners, remove the cheesy enemies, people who shoot you when you don't have the chance to shoot them. So make it clear that a player is going to be going into a combat encounter before the combat encounter actually happens. Most of the time, it's good to telegraph combat encounters before they happen so the player's on their guard, they can identify cover, and they have a few options that they can at least think that they had the chance to fight back before they die. Very, very important. I feel like there's more to say on that topic, but I think you get the picture. Most of the time, telegraphing your map's intentions in advance are good, and if you don't, even if it's subtle, like maybe you've got a really big room and the player thinks, oh shoot, there's going to be a big fight here. That alone just puts them on their toes, and they have at least an awareness that something's going to happen. When I walk around a corner in Ancient Warfare 3 and I think it's a normal corner and I get sniped and killed instantly, I didn't know something was going to happen, so it's very, very frustrating. So try to remove those encounters from your map as much as possible. The player needs to know what they're getting into most of the time. Or if you want the player to get ambushed, that's fine, but don't have it be lethal. So think about maybe having units come out that have very low skill so the player gets a chance to kill them, and now they know they're in the combat encounter. But if you have the player get ambushed by a unit with normal skill, normal damage, very easy for that play, especially with an automatic gun. It's so easy for the player to get lasered and insta-killed. So really be careful not to have your players get insta-killed in maps. That's generally what I recommend. Next up, I really recommend adding custom sound effects to your maps. This is something I talked about in my exploding units video. Custom sound effects, like custom models, are very important if you want your map to feel like it's its own game and it's not just a level in Ancient Warfare 3. And that's another thing where you have the whole world at your fingertips. As long as it's not a copyrighted sound effect and it's an OGG or I think a WAV file, you can put any sound effect you want in Ancient Warfare 3. Use things like free sound. Find Creative Commons 0 sound effects so that those are copyright free, no attribution required. Those are the most reliable ones. You can also take things that require attribution. Just make sure you do it properly in the description of your map or the map itself. Strongly recommend sound effects for when the player needs to blow something up. Add an explosion sound effect. When the player picks up a gun, add like a picking up sound effect. When the player opens a door, add a door clanking open sound effect. It really does a lot to immerse the player. This is something that you should not overlook as a map maker in 2026 because all the big dogs are loading their map with custom sound effects that do not exist in Ancient Warfare 3. You have to go out on your own on the internet, find them, download them, and put them in Ancient Warfare 3. And finally, perhaps the most important, maybe also some people will disagree, but this is something I actually feel very strongly about. Most maps are not hurt by regen scripts. And if you don't want to do a regen script, find some way to provide more health resources than you think the player is going to need. Generally speaking, in Ancient Warfare 3, where you're going to lose your players is when they die, especially if it's an unsatisfying death, and unsatisfying deaths tend to be unavoidable deaths. I talked about in the Sharp Corners section that when a player doesn't have even a chance to survive an encounter, then it turns them off. They often close the map. I often want to close a map when I die that way, but I sacrifice myself for my viewers and reload it. Reloading a map is very, very tedious for especially the bigger ones. So oftentimes, you have to find ways for the player to simply not die, and that's okay. You don't need to make a map very hard for it to be very good. So I often advocate for health regeneration scripts, more medkits, that kind of thing. I feel like there's a more eloquent way to put this, but I'm just doing this off the cuff, so that's what I'm going to say. Another example of an encounter that the player doesn't have a chance of even surviving, they have no chance of winning, just like when you get sniped around the corner, is when you're really hurt from a previous encounter. You have like 10 health, and you have no medkit. So you're starting the next encounter with 10 health. You're going to get hit at least once, so you know you're going to die. You have 0 chance. That's why giving the player regen so they can rebuild their health after a difficult encounter is very satisfying, because they feel like they suddenly have a chance again. But if they're forced to limp around with only 10 health, they know a single hit and they're dead, and they start treating the map very differently. They start cheesing it, and oftentimes they sort of expect that they're already dead. It's not good. I advocate for adding regeneration scripts to most maps and or just extra medkits all around. So that's the 10 things I thought of just off the top of my head on how to easily improve your Ancient Warfare 3 map. I might make more videos like this in the future if people like them. Feel free to share your thoughts on these ideas in the comments down below. I do love replying to them. Also, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to support the Tomebinder channel. It does help me out in the algorithm quite a bit. With that, everybody, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.